Hi, this is Khalil Golivala. Welcome to another episode of BIPOC Manager podcast. In today's episode, I'm very excited to have an ex-colleague of mine, Misha Sidyakov, with us. Misha is a senior data scientist at Fractal, formerly at Sobeys and Loblaws. He also has a popular YouTube channel focused on Python programming tutorials. Misha, thank you for being a guest today.
It's always a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to the chat.
Amazing, Misha. One thing to think about is how data science is a very competitive field, and you've built a very successful career in it, working for some of the top retail companies. What kind of barriers have you encountered? And can you walk me through how you kind of stood out in your journey?
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely getting a lot of popularity nowadays, and the field is growing a lot, especially with generative AI being super popular and all these different projects coming up and companies starting to invest heavily into analytics, especially once they do a few POCs and they realize that there is actual value in some projects that can be developed by analysts, data scientists, like engineers, and so on. And I feel like as this field gets more lucrative, obviously the competition goes up significantly, right? And it's always an example of, back in the day, if you had a bachelor's degree, then it made you stand out from other candidates. I feel like now for a lot of roles, um, the master's degree is almost a requirement. Having said that, it's not for all the roles, not necessarily for junior roles, but in general, I feel like just having a degree from a good school is not enough. And not necessarily everywhere your grades are going to matter. People focus on a bunch of other stuff rather than your technical knowledge, and that is, what do you do, like, in terms of doing something else with your knowledge of code? Do you just do like work, or do you do any like side projects, or do you have a GitHub repository where you tried something, where it's something interesting? And during the hiring process, a lot of times it's asked to share that. If you have a portfolio, similar like any designer was sharing their portfolio with like drawings, pictures, and like any illustrator with like their Photoshop edits and so on. It's becoming very popular in data science. It's also kind of a required part of your application. So definitely spending time on working on things like that, and deepening your knowledge, and perhaps making something, some project that's of particular interest to you, or is fun, or is interesting, or that it's going to help you stand out from the crowd, is definitely super helpful. And I feel like, for me, I mean, one of the things that most, when I was switching jobs, a lot of times, what I was asked is, why do I have so many degrees? And I feel like I just kept going back to school and back to school and back to school. So I did my bachelor's degree, I did my first master's degree, I did my second master's degree, and I'm about to finish my third master's degree. So obviously they look at you and they ask, like, why are you doing this? Do you have nothing else to do, or something along those lines? I feel like just as it just helps me with continuous learning. And specifically, I'm one of these types of people that, like, I take online courses, but I don't really have a sense of commitment to them. Like, so there's no commitment in the sense of, there's a deadline, you have to do it by this date, there's going to be an assignment, there's going to be graded, there's going to be an exam, and in the end, you're going to get not like some online certificate you completed some course, but it's going to be a credential from a reputable institution. So I feel like for me, it's very important. And obviously, you learn a lot of new stuff. So that, I would say, that helps you stand out. And yeah, like any extracurriculars, any projects that you do, I feel like that helps a lot. And another big emphasis is definitely on how good you are of a team player.
Yeah.
So there are roles where, a lot of work is just you're being an individual contributor and you're just doing your own stuff and it's good to go. But majority of the cases, probably more than 90% of the cases, you're working as a part of the team, right? And, you can be the smartest person in the room, but if nobody is enjoying working with you, then that's potentially going to be a problem, right? On the other hand, you may not be as good technically, but you're just an amazing person. You're a team player. You want to learn. You help out others. I feel like companies are willing to take a bigger kind of like gamble on that, because we can teach you how to code and how to do like figure out all the math, but the way that you are with people, it's not necessarily, it's just how you are, right? And it's not up to like me, say, as a manager, to change you as a person, right? So I feel like cultural fit and like company values fit is extremely important. So I would say those probably are the main aspects.
Okay, so what I heard from Misha was this focus on sort of, being sort of a continuous learner, because I imagine the field changes so far. So I have education, just having a portfolio, so having like something like GitHub, you can show the kind of work you've done, but also an element of personality, right? Being someone who can work with team and understand kind of contributions there. One thing I'll pick up, Misha, is you talked about how, during the interview process, you had people call out the fact that you have these different education, rather than see the strength, they saw it as something to question. Were there other, like, do you notice that as a data scientist, there's certain types of questions that you keep getting asked in these interviews?
I mean, there are kind of two categories of the questions, and then some of them are technical, and it depends, like company by company, process by process, they differ. But in general, I feel like a lot of questions are, well, I mean, it starts as general, introduce yourself, tell us about yourself, what you do, and things like that. And I feel like that gives a very big first impression.
Yeah.
And it's very important because the recruiter is right away, or the hiring manager, they're able to tell if you're well spoken, if you're comfortable, and if they ask certain questions to which perhaps you don't know the answer, and then not necessarily technical questions, or you know they will know right away if you're trying to make something up.
Mm.
And in some cases you could be successful at that. Most cases you probably won't. And sometimes it just doesn't hurt to say, oh, I don't know how to answer this question, or I never thought about it this way, or anything like that. You're not a robot that's supposed to score 100 of 100 everywhere. But I feel like a lot of questions are centered around, how do you work under deadlines, under stress, how, like, if a colleague needs like help, like how likely are you, if you have a lot on your plate, how likely are you to help them out, or to change priorities and pause on your stuff, and say, okay, I can do my stuff later, but I'm going to help you out today, and I figure my stuff like tomorrow. Or you're going to focus on your stuff first and then help out the colleague afterwards once you're done. So I feel like these behavioral questions are quite popular, and I would say every employer is looking for something different. So there is no that one recipe that you can just take and apply to everything. Um, but as people have more of these interviews or more of these conversations, I feel like you get pretty comfortable to understand the direction of which the conversation is going and how you should position yourself in the conversation.
Okay, amazing. Thank you for the insights, Misha. To change track a little bit, you've also got this amazing YouTube channel where you kind of teach Python programming. Can you talk more about sort of, like what made you launch this channel, kind of like what you've discovered about it and what surprised you about it?
Sure. So I guess prior to my YouTube channel, I started writing a Python blog where I was just writing like coding tutorials, but they were like written. So it's almost like if you're like reading a lecture with like code snippets. And it started back in the days when I was working at Loblaw with one of my colleagues. We were just exploring some stuff for work, and um, I felt like, oh, this is something very interesting. We figure out the answer. And I was like, well, there's probably a lot of people who want to know about this. So why don't I write an article about it? But then the question is, where do you write the article? So you kind of need to figure out, are you going to host your blog? Like you're going to create your own website and like things like that, which I really wanted to learn how to do. So for me, it was like a great learning experience. So it started with the blog as a website where I was posting these tutorials, and right now it has about, I'd say, close to 200,000 readers every single year. And what I realized is that for a significant chunk of my audience, they like video content. So I'm more of a person who is, if I see the instructions in the PDF, I can follow them and I feel very comfortable. For a lot of people, they're more visual learners in the sense of they want to see how you're doing it so they can repeat it and understand every step where you're explaining it. Because, when I am speaking about what I'm doing, I can add much more detail compared to when I'm writing, because the writing has to be concise, right? You don't want to write like, a poem about every single step. It's actually pretty challenging to even phrase it in writing without, pointing at something all the time whenever you're doing it. And I was like, okay, sure, I should just make a video. And I made a video and I uploaded it to YouTube, and people started watching it, and I started getting these followers or subscribers. People started like liking the video, sharing it, commenting. I've had like emails from people asking, "Oh, like we saw your tutorial, but we're trying to do this. Do you have any tips how we should do like X, Y, and Z, or like how do we tweak your code to do something else?" Um, and yeah, and then I just felt like, well, okay, so I have a lot of articles, so I can probably make a lot of videos. Well, obviously, some of them are much more popular than others. I think so far, total channel did just north of 200,000 views. Um, but yeah, and I feel like the more you produce, the more interesting it is, the more comfortable you get. Um, and obviously, it's that part of me that, you know, I'm kind of interested in sharing the knowledge, especially if like, people are interested in learning and then they can get these learnings for absolutely free by just going to YouTube, finding this relevant tutorial and watching it and learning something new. And obviously it's a lot of support from people just in general, right? People email you to say thank you, they write like comments, they reach out to you on like LinkedIn or like somewhere else. As I said, like they write you like emails. And I feel like another very big part, just as I mentioned before, that you need to have a certain portfolio of projects and just go and show your prospective employer like, look, this is what I do, and I'm not just somebody who just got hundreds in every single class and has all the A pluses. I feel like for me, I don't really need a portfolio because I have the blog and the channel. So it kind of substitutes. And, even if it's not for hiring, but just in general, when you speak to people, they find it kind of like really, really fascinating. So to me, I think of it as more like, well, it's just something I do.
Yeah.
And, when people find out, they're like, oh, really? This is so cool. And to me, it's kind of like, I mean, perhaps it is cool, but I just don't think of it as it being that cool, right? So I think that's kind of like my view on this.
Amazing. No, I mean, you put such love into your videos. And I can imagine as a data scientist, you're bringing all that background. I mean, you talk about the master's degree. So not only these videos, but I imagine highly informed, highly thought out. And what I find also interesting is, Misha, you said that how, you prefer something that's written. But you notice that people who are engaging with you, they prefer video content. So you went out and you learned something, imagine like video editing, video production, to be able to reach those people.
Yeah, there was definitely some steep learning curve in the beginning, and the number of tries I had to do to record a first like 10-minute video. I think it took me like 3 days to record it properly and to do all the editing and stuff. But then I feel like with time, after you do like 10 of these videos, you get better.
Mm.
Once you do 20, you get even better, and then you can just free flow. Like I
Yeah.
feel like now if I need to record a tutorial, I just depending on the length, uh, I think end to end, from me starting to record it to doing all the edits, to uploading it on YouTube, to writing descriptions, to creating thumbnails, to sharing it in like different social media platforms, that being like Facebook, Instagram, my blog, LinkedIn, and everywhere. It probably is about 3 hours, I would say. Well, compared to like 3 days prior to that. So 72 hours versus 3 hours is kind of like a significant shift. But yeah, it's one of those things where um, practice makes perfect. And I mean, in the beginning, also in my tutorials, I never recorded the webcam where I'm explaining stuff. I just thought that, I'm just going to talk and people are just going to look at the code and they will understand. But what you realize very quickly is that even though they hear you, they kind of miss the presence of a person. And I watched a video where somebody was explaining about it and he was talking in front of the camera. And then all of a sudden he just shuts off the camera and you just hear his voice, right? So it's just like black screen, right? And it made me feel kind of strange. And then I realized, well, if people are watching my tutorials and they feel the same way, this is not like the best feeling, perhaps,
Yeah.
even though everyone is different. And, there are some channels where YouTubers are not recording themselves or just explaining stuff. And they have like millions and millions of followers. I just felt like for my niche, it was more like appropriate and like where people can relate to better. And also just purely from the purposes of like identity and brand management just for myself, right? So whenever people watch the video, they're like, okay, it's that guy, like we saw him before,
Mm.
right? If you like if they're scrolling through like your YouTube shorts or like Instagram reels or something, like how do they know it's me? They're not going to look at the username every time, or like people's voices are relatively similar if there's like 1,000 different YouTubers explaining the same concepts. But I feel like, yeah, from the personal brand perspective, I felt like it was something like very important. And obviously for me, like myself, right, the recording without the camera is much, 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 much easier, because I can just open like a Word document on the second screen and I can look here. My microphone is going to be here, the code is going to be here, and I'm just going to read and just drag my mouse here. Whereas with a camera, I can't do this. It's going to look awkward. So you kind of start, instead of like reading whatever I wrote, I just take out like some main points, and then I'm able to kind of like go on the fly. It's challenging, but I feel like that with like every single video just gets better and better and better and better, and my time of production just decreases.
Mm. Yeah, Misha, thank you so much for that. It's just masterclass on you just understand the dynamics of video, right? And the fact that you're
Yeah.
exploring it. You were mentioning identity, you were mentioning personal brand. Can you talk a bit more of how your heritage and background kind of feeds into your identity in terms of your values, or how you kind of view the world?
Yeah, for sure. So obviously, and now for the audience, I am Russian. I grew up in Russia until my high school, and from my high school, I moved to Canada. So I feel like by the time I moved here, I was like I was still like, I wouldn't call myself a child. I was more like already like a young adult at uh, at the time, and a lot of things that I learned came from where I grew up, right? And a lot of like cultural stuff that I learned also came from there. So I feel like getting assimilated within the Canadian culture was a challenge in the beginning, um especially like the moments where like I first went to high school and I met like my classmates, and people end up talking about something and they refer to some like TV shows or something like that, which I've never watched in my life. Like I had no idea what Netflix was. Like we had like our own different thing back home, but so I didn't, and I watched like Hollywood movies, but not like a bunch of TV shows. So for me to relate to certain jokes that people laugh about was a big thing, where I was just standing and I just felt weird. I'm like, what are they talking about? Like, why is this funny? Right. And I feel like that gap slowly bridges, like it narrows down over time. Um, but yeah, definitely a lot of stuff when it comes down to how I look at um, my work, my relationships with family, friends, and so on is definitely influenced by the culture. So, I you know I grew up in the environment where I was always challenged to be better. So not necessarily like forced, like do better, you have to do better. But it kind of became a very common thing in my head that settling for less is not enough. So you are like, if you go and, I used to do competitive swimming, and you go to a race and you're third. Well, yeah, it's good that you're third, but there's someone who is second, and then there's someone who is first, right? So it's not like, oh, you are bad because you're not second or first. It's more like if they were able to do it, you're able to. You just need to figure out how, and you need to put in the work. And um, I feel like that had a lot of implication on how I look at things. So I'm like a lot of my colleagues will probably describe me pretty stubborn. So like I know when I need to do something a certain way, and I know I'm right. Um, I'm most likely going to push through and do it the way that I see it correct, even though I'm like open to feedback. And if people can articulate their different opinion, I'm more than open to understanding it. And I'm actually curious to understand like how they look at the problem. But I feel like that persistence and stubbornness is something that definitely carried over with me from my childhood. So it's not something like I was like this my entire life, be back home, and then in like once I moved here, once I was in university, once I started my first job, when I was switching between the jobs. So I feel like that definitely has an impact. Obviously being multilingual um, has another impact that, you know, I speak English just as good as I speak Russian. And sometimes even with my parents, it's much easier for me to say certain things in English than in Russian. But I feel like in general, people who are bilingual, or like more than one language, um, their brain is wired slightly, it's not wired differently, but I feel like it's able to perform certain computations relatively faster compared to people who speak only one language. Even though, like, neuroscientists and psychologists and everyone might disagree with me, this is kind of like my personal take, but I feel like it is very important. And I guess, the idea of never settling for less, so obviously being like immigrants and the immigrant family here, it's kind of like, we moved here to, you know find a better life. And it's kind of always a part of the drive that kind of tells you, you need to do it, even sometimes when you don't want to do it. It's really like the backbone. It gets in my mind. I'm like, you have to. It doesn't matter that you're tired and whatever. Yes, you need to give yourself breaks, and nobody's saying that you need to work yourself like a dog unlimited, right, until you just like can't do it anymore. But you always need to have that control and understanding of the journey, right? You need to know where you are right now, where you were yesterday, and where you want to be tomorrow, right? And that preferably needs to be an upward sloping trend, right? And if it's not, then clearly you need to look back and figure out, why is this happening? And I feel like it's probably one of the most important things that I would say carried over like with time. And I feel like it's only getting stronger. That idea that, you need to just stay focused and keep pushing. And it's the same thing with anything. It's the same thing with learning. If you don't understand, it doesn't mean that you're stupid or you're incapable. You just need to practice more. It's the same thing with sports, right? You need to put in the hours. It's the same thing with programming. You need to put in the hours, and it's not enough to just learn it once. Because for me, if I'm not going to code for a year, I'll remember general concepts of what needs to happen. But if you're not practicing it every day, then that is going to be challenging. And I feel like in a lot of other, aspects of life, you just need to know that you need to push through, regardless of whether it's related to your like work life, personal life, and whenever you're going through these ups and downs, tomorrow is like there's another day, and the sun is going to shine again, and you just need to get up and like just keep grinding, because if you're not doing it now, there's a person next door who's doing it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like that mentality that definitely came with me from back home, that everybody wants to have a place under the sun,
Yeah.
right? And then if you're not, it's kind of like going to the beach whenever you're on vacation, right? You kind of want to take the prime spots, and you know that if you're not going to do it, it's going to be gone. And this is the same idea, right? You just need to realize that if you're not doing it, somebody else is doing it, and there's another person who's doing it twice as hard. So it doesn't mean that you need to just like go crazy, but you need to figure out a path on like with certain like goals, and along the lines of like on that journey to the goal, there needs to be like some realizable milestones that you can give yourself a break over certain things. So for me, it was like, I don't know, when in terms of YouTube channel, it was getting first 100 subscribers, then 500 subscribers, and 1,000 subscribers. And every time I was like, okay, 1,000 subscribers, okay, I'm gonna give myself a little treat, and I don't know, I'll go buy myself something new, like a new keyboard for a computer or whatever, or just go have dinner at a restaurant or something like that. So it's always this, you do something, you get rewarded, because the reality is, no matter what aspect you take it in life, it's going to be the same, right? You take it to work, you perform, you do a good job, people know that you're doing a good job. It helps you a lot to stand out from the crowd and helps you progress in your career. It's the same thing that worked for me in education, in my YouTube channel, in my blog, and yeah, in personal relationships, friends, family, and so on and so forth. So you name it.
Misha, thank you for sharing that, because something that I hear a lot talking to people who are either from minority communities or immigrants is that word stubborn, is that sense of competition. Growing up in environments, right, to understand that if you're not going to go there, someone else is going to go there. And so you've got to hold yourself to a high standard. But something else I want to mention, Misha, which is so amazing, is a lot of times I think that voice ends up being one where someone feels unworthy. But I think talking to you sense where it's actually a sense of, it's not about being feel unworthy. It's like, okay, I got third. I don't have to feel bad for being third, but I can think about what can I do to get into second place, to get into first place. And I
Yeah,
balance
I
so
I
well.
feel like a lot of it, like it's very important that people start having this perception of things. So yeah, like a natural thing, oh, like something wasn't successful, oh, like I didn't get an A in the course, I only got a B. And then, you know, yeah, I mean, it sucks. But what you need to do is not allow that to carry you down, because it's very easy to go down the stairs. It's very difficult to go up. All right. So that's why in life in general, I would say having a mentor is very important. And for some people, a mentor is like their friend or an older friend, or their parent. Like, I mean, can be younger friend, doesn't really matter, but somebody that is in a certain position of respect in your eyes, especially when you look at, like, let's say like a work mentor, like a career coach or a career mentor. It needs to be someone who achieved certain things that you're interested in achieving. So I don't really believe in just a general framework of saying like, hey, I'm a career coach, I'm like, and I can specialize in everything, right? So it's also something that I've been doing for quite some time. I've been mentoring like people who just graduated from university programs, or like just had their entry level jobs. I mentor them how to enter that more, let's say, senior market, like what skills they need to have, what knowledge they need to have, and just make sure that they have a path and keep them accountable. And I feel like, if we talk about sports, in that sense, the mentor is your coach, right? If we talk about life, the mentor is, hopefully it is a parent. In some cases, it can be like somebody else, like another family member. It can be just a friend. But definitely somebody who, like if they're going to say something, that you're not just going to listen and then forget. Like you'll actually pay attention and try to like learn it. And definitely, like as you mentioned, like this example of, oh yeah, I came third. Well, it's not really nice. Like it takes a lot of effort and a lot of time to develop the mentality of, okay, I came third. Well, not not good, not bad. It is what it is. But how can I learn from this, and like what are the actions I should take so I can improve? So that mentality is what separates big time champions from everybody else, right? And that's not necessarily the sport, right? It's your career, it's everywhere. Because people who have enthusiasm and those who keep trying, they clearly stand out from the crowd, right? So if you're going to keep knocking on the door, well, chances are most likely at some point somebody will open.
Yeah. Amazing, Misha. Before we wrap up, is there anything that you'd like to mention? Anything you'd like to highlight?
For sure. I feel like in this instance, it really takes to have a particular relationship with your parents, right? Because not for like unfortunately not for everyone, they would look at their parent as their role model, for example, right? And there's different cases, like life is different for everyone. But I feel like if it's somebody from your family who you look up to, and usually it's pretty funny, but every time somebody's like, well, it's actually like my grandparents, or it's like my uncle, or it's like my older brother, people rarely mention that, oh, this it's my parent. And I mean, I agree. I feel like in my case it's like a collective force. So it's not like, I think in different periods of life it was different people. So first it was like my mom, then it was like my dad, and it was my grandma, and it was my uncle, and then somebody else, and then somebody else. But I feel like in general, like even though like I'm extremely stubborn, I was always open to, like, whenever they said something, I was very open to their advice. So yeah, I mean, for a lot of stuff when it comes down to work, if your parents are not like executives or anything, and you want to be an executive, and you perhaps can find a better mentor who is coached people who became executives, or who is an executive themselves, right? So it's a very niche market. So it's kind of like you're trying to get a car, and you go on these test rides,
Yeah.
and only after a certain one you figure something out. That's why I always tell people who I mentor for, like, in terms of data science, you know always speak to as many mentors as you want or as you can, because we all have different approaches. We all you know think of your progression differently. Some mentors want you to focus on like technical skills, some mentors want you to focus on soft skills. I mean, I'm kind of like in between the two. um, but yeah, it's like you want to get a car and you're just going on test rides, and you just want to get the best thing for you, like for yourself, and like max value for your dollars. I think that's extremely important. I mean, it would be amazing if if everyone was able to say, yeah, it's actually my parents who, like, taught me like this and this, and I look up to them in this sense and this sense. But the reality is, it's not always we look up to our parents in everything, and a lot of it is like, it could be like different challenges, like you're disagreeing with your parents a lot, or you don't find like common grounds and like your interests or your ideas, or you feel like, oh, like my parents don't understand me, and things like that. So that kind of like shakes that relationship like left and right. That's why it is recommended, or like advisable, perhaps, again, from what I've heard around, that a mentor is someone who's not like related to you, and there is uh at least like in my case, for example, in terms of school, there's like a financial incentive. Like I have to pay to go to school, right? So it keeps me accountable. So mentorship is a similar idea, very similar to like personal coaching in the gym. The reality is you can go to the gym yourself, right? And it's not that difficult. Yes, like a part of it is like their knowledge and what they can tell you and their advice, and they can help you out, but you don't need to do it every day. The people go because they know that they paid for it.
Yeah.
This is a very similar idea because, you know, if your mentor is saying tomorrow you need to do X, Y, and Z, and, you know, in the morning you feel like you're under the weather, your parents are going to be like, well, take a day off.
Mm.
Right? They're going to feel sorry for you and like, yeah, you can do it tomorrow. Well, guess what? As I said before, there's somebody who's doing it right now, and they're also under the weather, but they're doing it, right? So in that case, like that, like abstraction
Mm.
from, oh, like it's like my son or it's my daughter, and then okay, I can cut them some slack, versus a mentor is like, okay, it doesn't work like that. You need to do A, B, and C
Yeah.
to get to your result, and it doesn't matter. And it's very important that that they push. The reality is a lot of people are not um, like they're not open to that. They
Mm.
feel like it's going to be a very easy ride, and they don't want to be pushed.
Yeah.
Like it's taking them out of their comfort zone, but you will only grow and you will only overachieve when you're out of the comfort zone. If you're going to be in your comfort zone, you will get results, like no doubt. If you're consistent with it and you're doing everything like all the time, you're pushing, yes, but you're not pushing yourself to your limits, and the limit is definitely far out of your comfort zone. So even stepping out of your comfort zone this much already gives you like a
Yeah.
this big of a boost when you think of it in the long run.
Amazing, Misha. Thank you for that. In terms of anybody who wants to get in touch with you or follow your content, what's the best way they can do that?
Probably the easiest way would be to just add me on LinkedIn, you know, shoot me a message. It's not, I don't have thousands of people messaging me, so I go through everyone who reaches out. So yeah, like if people have any, if your audience has like any questions in particular about data science field, or you know they're trying to figure out which program they should go to in the university if they want to pursue like software engineering or data science or computer science or something like that, or if it's parents who are thinking for their kid, right? If their kid is like in, I don't know, grade 9 or grade 10 or grade 11, what should, like based on their interests, you know, which school perhaps they should go to. I mean, I'm pretty knowledgeable in terms of Canada. In terms of US, I have pretty good exposure, so I can give some tips here and there. But yeah, in general, like anything related to career advice or like school advice or like a mentorship advice or anything like that, yeah, like LinkedIn will probably be the easiest and quickest way. And I'm sure you can just, you know, add the link below the video on YouTube, and yeah,
I got that,
so
Misha.
feel free anytime.
Thank you for that, Misha. And again, thank you so much for being a guest today.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Thank you.